Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says his party needs to change if it's going to beat Justin Trudeau and the Liberals in the next election. He says climate change is real and the party needs to address it. But the leader may be out of step with his own party members. Over the weekend, Conservative delegates rejected adding climate change is real to the party's policy book. Erin O'Toole joins us now from Ottawa. Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Good to welcome you back to the program. Thank you for making the time.
Good to be with you.
You said in your speech Friday, in part, we now fought and lost 2 elections against a carbon tax because voters did not think we were serious about addressing climate change. Yet your party this weekend voted down a policy plank that would declare climate change is real. How would Canadians take from that your party is serious about addressing climate change?
Well, Canadians should watch my speech. I talked about how important it is for us to have a strong and clear plan to reduce emissions, to combat climate change, a risk to our economy, to our future. I want this not only as Conservative leader, but as the father of young children, to make sure we have a strong plan on the environment while also a strong plan for economic recovery. That will be a priority for me as leader, and our party sees it as a priority as well.
Is that true, though, that your party does? Because you did make those points in your speech, yet wouldn't it be fair of Canadians to take away something different from the way in which your party voted this weekend?
We had a number of resolutions on a range of issues related to the economy, the environment, other things. There were a lot of measures within that resolution that led for it not to be put forward, Vashi. But I've been crystal clear. The debate is over. The Conservative Party in the next election will have a very serious plan to reduce emissions while also making sure Canadians get back to work. We secure an economic future for all Canadians. So it's a priority for me, and people will see we have a strong plan.
I have to challenge you on the idea that the motion itself or the policy plank itself was more convoluted than simply about whether climate change is real. All it said in addition to that was that we believe Canadian businesses classified as highly polluting need to take more responsibility, and that also we believe in supporting innovation in green technologies. All of those things don't seem overly complicated to say yes to if in fact you are serious about fighting climate change. Is your party just not behind you on this?
No, as you know, Vashi, this week we'll see a court decision because there's a provincial role here. In fact, the provinces have been leading on climate change for many years. In fact, Mr. Trudeau promised to never price carbon unless it was through the provinces years ago. He broke that promise. So I think in the case of our members, they want to make sure that provinces are respected as part of this, and it was too prescriptive in some people's view. But as I said, I will be crystal clear again. We will have a very comprehensive plan in the next election to fight climate change and to make sure that we support an economic recovery in all parts of the country. I'm leader. I'm working on it now, Vashi. It's a priority.
When is that plan coming?
Well, we will have a comprehensive plan before an election. We don't know when an election will come, but we're in the process of consulting people in the industry, experts. We're looking at some various policy options. We're taking the time to get this right because, as I said in my remarks, we cannot just hope that people will come around to views that we've had in the past. We have to make some key changes to earn the trust of more Canadians. And that's what my speech was about, Vashi. And I'm going to be relentlessly focused on putting forward a very strong plan on the economy, but also a very strong plan on the environment.
I have questions about the plan on the economy in a second. But are you undermining your own message about your own seriousness around climate change by not even saying, okay, the plan's coming in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months? You made almost a little bit of a joke about it, that people would be disappointed that plan wasn't in your speech on Friday. Are you undermining your own position there?
No, I look forward to speaking with you in detail about it when we have it done. This is best to get right. As I said, Mr. Trudeau has broken his promise by tripling his carbon tax. He originally said he would leave carbon pricing to the provinces. There's a court case on this. We have to recognize that Quebec has a different approach to BC and Alberta, for example. So we're taking the time to get it right. We will be a government that is ahead of a crisis or challenges, not always playing catch up and fixing things as they go along, as Mr. Trudeau has been.
What if the court rules in Mr. Trudeau's favor? What then?
Well, this is about where the provinces and the federal government need to work. The provinces and the federal government have shared jurisdiction on the environment in many ways, but the provinces are primary for natural resources. So when there's large emitters in some of those sectors, how can we work collaboratively with the provinces? That will be an approach that we try and take. How do we respect what some provinces are doing, like Quebec's cap and trade, which is lowering emissions. So shouldn't we support that rather than foisting an Ottawa knows best solution on everyone? That's why we have to get this right, to respect national unity and to keep the economy moving while we lower emissions.
Are you characterizing, though, what the federal government is doing accurately? Because they're not necessarily imposing their own plan on every province no matter what. It's that they've set a floor, and if the province doesn't meet the floor, then their plan is imposed in order to meet national goals or national targets. Doesn't that make sense?
Well, they're almost trying to say they will approve the various plans from the provinces. If the provinces are going to meet emission reductions on a timeline that is fair, that also allows them to allow families to have opportunities to work and the economy to grow, that has to be the approach we take here. I'm committed to making sure we reduce emissions and have an economic recovery. That's why we're having a detailed plan that will not be a tax on small business owners, on single seniors. It will be an approach that tries to get emissions down in a smart way. And we will talk more about it, Vashi, but make no mistake, this is a priority for me. It's why it was in my speech, and it will be a priority in our next election platform.
Will it be a tax on heavy emitters? That's something you'd signaled during your leadership campaign.
I think when you look, literally about a third of our emissions as a country come down to about 600 or 700 single emitters. So rather than taxing 30 million households, as Mr. Trudeau's doing, often people that are barely getting by, isn't it smarter to work collaboratively with large emitters and with provinces? How can we do it in a way that reflects technology, investments, but also gets emissions down? This is what we're spending the time to get right.
So what's the difference between what you're saying right now and what Andrew Scheer said in the last election? Because I covered that pretty extensively, and it sounded exactly the same.
Well, I don't think we spoke about the importance of the environment enough in the last election, Vashi, and we certainly didn't tell people a timeline, a plan on emission reduction. That's what we're going to try and get right. As I said, this is important to me. I talk about it with my daughter. It's one of her top issues, is having a serious plan on the environment. I worked on these issues in the private sector, Vashi. So unlike the Prime Minister, I don't just read what's provided to me. I'm going to make sure we have a very good plan. It's going to try and reflect getting our economy back on track. That is my priority, but we'll also have a serious commitment to emission reduction.
So I interpret from that your plan will differ from the last one in the election because you've agreed to set a timeline, that you've agreed to targets, something that Andrew Scheer didn't do explicitly. Is that really the only difference? Like, I'm just trying to get at here, you know, what you put forth in your speech, right? That people, you can't just expect voters to come around to the same ideas being presented. Are you just presenting them in a little bit of a different way and hoping that voters grab onto that?
No, we're going to have a series of proposals. It's why we've also said there should be a made in Canada approach to a net zero approach, where we can actually incentivize and look at some of the positive things happening in the forestry sector, in agriculture, in carbon capture and sequestration, for example, but also get emissions down. So if we can have the offset approach increased while also reducing emissions, that will accelerate the process. I really do think as well, we have to partner with the provinces on some of these investments, and we're taking the time to hear their priorities too.
Okay, on your plan for economic recovery, which you touched on during your speech, a recent Nanos Bloomberg poll asked Canadians, okay, which party do you think is best suited to manage the public purse? 33% of them said the Liberals compared to 24% for your party. I think you'd agree most of the time this question is polled over the past number of years, your party comes out ahead. Why do you think under your leadership, Canadians have lost faith that the Conservatives are better poised to manage the economy?
I think right now Canadians, Vashi, are looking at COVID rates. They're looking at whether they're in lockdown or red zones, and they're wondering why we're in 55th place in the vaccine deployment. That is all people are talking about. What I tried to show is we're launching a Canada Recovery Plan. That was a big part of my speech, to make sure that we're not in 55th place on the economic recovery. I think it's unacceptable to see how much we've lagged during this crisis. And when people see the plan and they get to know that I'd be a prime minister with serious business experience, serious experience getting things done in uniform, working as part of a team, also leading, that's what we need from a prime minister. So I have no doubt the most important poll on election day will reflect our strength on the economy.
Respectfully, though, that doesn't answer the question about why right now. I mean, is just because they're thinking of vaccines, you think they've lost faith in your party?
Absolutely. We've talked to thousands of Canadians. Right now, most Canadians don't realize how high the deficit is. Most don't realize we've spent more per capita than all the G7 countries and have the worst outcomes. Right now, people just want to see their grandparent again. They're worried about the family that owns the restaurant in their community, whether they'll survive till summer. They're worried about a third wave because Canada's late on the vaccine deployment. That is what we're talking about. I gave a speech, Vashi, to a largely empty room at the convention. That's because we're in a global health crisis, but that's why we're also putting forward a plan to get past it and reopen. And I think as people see our plan, they will see we're the choice for the next election.
Again, though, Mr. O'Toole, with respect, you're not accurately characterizing the outcomes, for example, of what's happened over the last number of months. You often say that Canada's economy has had the worst outcomes. But if you look at GDP or the size of the economy and whether it shrank or grew over the last year, the UK's economy shrank by 9.9% in 2020. France contracted 8.3%. Italy's economy finished the year 8.8% smaller. Even Japan's GDP contracted about 5.5%. We do not have the worst outcomes. Is it possible that perhaps Canadians right now do have faith in the governing party to manage the economy?
We have the worst outcome in the G7 with respect to employment. And we've spent on the COVID response per capita higher, but we were slow. There was already risks before COVID, Vashi, in terms of $160 billion of investment leaving Canada under Mr. Trudeau's watch. So I think Canadians want people to get back to work. They don't want this to be a period where Mr. Trudeau reimagines our economy and picks and chooses what sectors, what jobs he's going to support the recovery in. We need to get everyone back to work. We need the economy, all cylinders in the engine firing. That's going to be our focus. And people can see for themselves what the contraction has been, what the deficit is, but we really need to get working. That's going to be our focus.
Okay, Mr. O'Toole, I'm out of time. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's Erin O'Toole, leader of the Federal Conservative Party. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.